I'm so sorry I can't be there in person. But I want to thank Frank Gaffney and the entire team at the Center for Security Policy for elevating these critical issues. Frank is a patriot. He loves this country, and he is clear-eyed about the incredible threat of radical Islamic terrorism. The recent attacks on Paris and San Bernardino have brought front and center the issue of radical Islamic terrorism. But the fact of the matter is that this problem has been festering unattended for the entire Obama administration. For President Obama, however, such issues are at the peripheral, at best, to his core progressive agenda, an agenda that appeases our enemies before actually defending the national security interest of our great country. While the President and his secretaries of state have chosen to ignore the problem and to pull back from global leadership, terrorists in groups like ISIS have mobilized and carried out a string of deadly attacks around the globe. It's worth noting that the attack on San Bernardino has been called the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. Actually, that's not technically accurate. 14 people were murdered in San Bernardino, and 14 people were also murdered early in the Obama administration. The attack on Fort Hood in my home state of Texas on November 9th, 2009. The littlest victim, the unborn baby of Private Francesca Valdez, was brutally murdered along with her mother as Nidal Hassan shouted, "Allahu Akbar." The Obama administration responded by calling the Fort Hood terrorist attack workplace violence. We cannot be so blind. One of the things I'm most proud of my tenure in the Senate is that I introduced legislation in the Senate to mandate that the soldiers who were murdered at Fort Hood receive the Purple Heart. And over the active opposition of the Obama Pentagon, I was able to earn the support of both Democrats and Republicans on the Senate Armed Services Committee. We passed that legislation into law in December and in April. Finally, 5 years later, those who were shot at Fort Hood were awarded the Purple Hearts they deserved from a grateful nation. Whether it's Fort Hood, San Bernardino, or a number of others in between, from Little Rock to Boston to Garland to Chattanooga, President Obama's approach has been to treat each one in isolation. The administration has called the perpetrators lone wolves, not to be associated with formal groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS because they didn't receive direct orders from them. They investigate the suspects, but they ignore the reality that our nation is under attack. What America needs to keep us safe here at home is first a firm resolve to always protect America's freedom here at home. Americans no longer feel safe in their schools, their workplaces, and their cities. This should not be a new standard. This should not be a new normal. And a safe America starts with a secure America. It is long past time to secure the border. When terrorists can simply swim across the Rio Grande, we are daring them to make the journey. When 40% of illegal immigrants in our country are visa overstays, we are inviting evil actors to game our system, as was the case with one of the 9/11 hijackers. And when we are opening up our country to thousands of refugees from regions filled with terrorists with the expressed intent to kill us, our immigration policy ceases to be merely an economic or social question. Border security is national security. We need a president with the political will to secure the border once and for all. I've outlined a detailed immigration plan to do just that. You can read all of it at tedcruz.org. It includes finally completing all 700 miles of the wall, mandated by federal statute that the Obama administration refuses to build. It includes tripling the Border Patrol, increasing the fixed-wing and rotary-wing aircraft fourfold, finishing the biometric exit-entry system, again, required by current federal law. Again, the Obama administration refuses to follow that law. And it includes putting in place a strong E-Verify system. It includes ending catch and release, ending welfare benefits to those here illegally, and ending the Obama administration's indefensible policy of releasing violent criminal illegal aliens. I've also introduced legislation in the Senate to halt our refugee program for those coming from terrorist-ridden countries, from those where al-Qaeda or ISIS control significant territory. In Syria in particular, there's no question that the humanitarian disaster that is unfolding is horrific. Millions of people have been displaced by the savage violence. Millions are now living in camps that place severe strains on the resources of our allies. And it's natural that out of our generosity, we want to stop this misery. And while the United States has been the largest donor to the refugee cause by a factor of 10, and let me repeat that, the United States has provided $1.2 billion to care for these refugees, more than 10 times what any other nation provides. Nonetheless, President Obama and Hillary Clinton stands up and lectures the American people that we are somehow not compassionate. Frankly, it's offensive. And we cannot make the mistake of extending our generosity to undermine our citizens' safety. The very first obligation of a commander-in-chief is to protect the safety of every American citizen. We need to take off the blinders of political correctness that prevent us from seeing what's right in front of us. The enemy is radical Islamic terrorism, and it is trying to destroy our country and our way of life. In a Wall Street Journal column recently written by Peggy Noonan, she wrote about the need for us to robustly defend our First Amendment right to free speech against the forces that are trying to shame us into silence. It raises the specter that Americans will be labeled as bigots if they dare utter the word Islam in connection with a terrorist attack. Our president refuses to do so. In fact, he spent a significant portion of his Sunday address as an apologist for Islam. And Frank Gaffney has been attacked over and over again for having the courage to stand up and speak the name radical Islamic terrorism of the enemy that is waging jihad against us. And the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, told a gathering the day after San Bernardino that her department would move to prosecute anyone whose, quote, anti-Muslim rhetoric edged towards violence. As has been the case all too often in the Obama administration, we may be facing the weaponization of one of our own government agencies, deployed not to protect Americans, but to try to force them to submit to the Obama administration's code of what is and is not acceptable speech. In fact, we're already seeing fear stifle speech. The neighbors of the San Bernardino terrorist reportedly found their behavior odd. But until now, they didn't say anything to law enforcement because they were scared they would be accused of racial profiling. Loretta Lynch's ban on anti-Muslim rhetoric, what she considers rhetoric against radical Islamic terrorists, is already producing its chilling effect, and it is preventing Americans from taking basic steps to protect ourselves. So let's take off the blinders. It is time to say these attacks are not isolated incidents. These wolves are not lone. They are instead operating as an ideological pack. And the thing that unites them is their fanatical adherence to Islamic supremacism, their conviction that the world must submit to their form of Islam or die. This evil force is present today in our countries. In January 2017, we need a commander-in-chief that stands up and says, we will defeat radical Islamic terrorism. We need a commander-in-chief who says we will utterly destroy ISIS. We will carpet bomb them into oblivion. We need a commander-in-chief who makes clear to every militant on the face of the planet, if you go and join ISIS, if you wage war, if you wage jihad against America and attempt to murder innocent Americans, you are signing your death warrant. And all of us should be encouraged. Let there be no doubt about it. America is worth the fight. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.